And welcome to another episode of Ardent Cinema, the #1 podcast for a book club style discussion of all things movies. This is a weekly podcast, and we encourage you to follow along as we take a deep dive into each movie's plot, overall themes, what we thought of the acting and directing, our feelings on the film, and more. At the end of each episode, we will announce the movie for next week, so make sure to listen until the end. I am your climactic host, Sean.
I am your pervasive host, Daniel.
Welcome to the show. Soy Alejandro de España. No hablo español. This week, we hope you watch along with us for Lolita, 1962.
How did they ever make a movie of Lolita? Lolita!
Available on HBO Max and Blu-ray. Directed by Stanley Kubrick and written by Vladimir Nabokov and Kubrick. Starring James Mason as Professor Humbert Humbert, Shelley Winters as Charlotte Hayes, Sue Leon as Lolita, and Peter Sellers as Claire Quilty and Dr. Zempf. Lolita is trying to live a normal 14-year-old girl's life, but middle-aged men can't seem to stop lusting after her. When Professor Humbert marries her mom, it's an awkward case of too many cooks in the kitchen. But little does he know, another man has already made a claim on those cupcakes. Can she avoid these crazy men, or will someone wind up getting shot in the face? Find out now.
Boo.
Yay.
Woof.
That was good.
Great movie, uncomfortable movie. It makes a point of showing how predators delude themselves with romantic ideas and how it's not all trench coats and alleyways. What'd you think, Dano?
I thought it was very disturbing overall. And what a strange combination of tones in this film, right? There's a little bit of like a slapstick comedy kind of thrown in there, and the disguises, like the subject of the film at the same time is just very serious, you know, and very taboo. So I didn't know how to feel about that while I was watching it.
Yeah, echoing what Danny said, it's a very tough watch of a film. Personally, I didn't really like it. I don't know. To me, it just felt like a 2.5 hour movie of watching this asshole get his just desserts. And that to me is not really that engaging. So it was a tough watch for a variety of reasons I'll get into later.
I'd say it was engaging for me. It definitely was engaging. It just there were no characters to really root for.
That's
I feel
my
in this,
thing.
you know, like
Well, Lolita.
Definitely not.
No?
I hated Lolita. I hated her. She knew what she was doing. She knew she was being very manipulative.
Well, sure, but she was being groomed too, so of course she's going to go along with it.
Yes.
I would agree with Alejandro. Yeah, there's only so much you can really blame on her. I don't know that she has a whole lot of blame. I mean, to be fair, we don't know the extent to which that she is potentially leaning into it a bit more.
Look,
that's kind of a central theme of the film. I think like they keep coming back to like, you know, we kind of feel the main character's paranoia in terms of like her relationships with other people.
Yeah.
Right. I think the director really leaned into that. So to me, I read it more as Alejandro. It's just she's not really leaning into it. It's just the nature of her situation.
Right, the point of grooming is to make them complicit. So it's going to look that way, like she's the one being seductive and messing around and stuff because she's been groomed for that behavior.
Well, I feel like she was being groomed specifically for Claire Quilty.
That doesn't matter though.
I don't know. I felt like
abuse at that age causes huge personality changes, one of them being overly sexualized.
Huh.
It's not going to be just towards him.
Well, I don't know. I felt like she really seemed to know what she was doing. It almost felt like even in the beginning when Humbert first moves into the house and sees her already, like I just feel like the way she's even looking at him, like she just already knows, like I got this guy. Like this guy's like looking at me, and I'm in charge.
At this point,
here.
she's already been
groomed.
Exactly.
By Claire. True. But I don't know. She just has this power dynamic over him.
Well, and also at this point, and through a lot of the film, a part of what makes it uncomfortable is that we're looking through his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So he sees it as I'm being seduced, and this is a romantic, one of a kind thing, but that may not be so much the case. It's a
Oh well, I mean, I'm going
unqualified perspective, you know?
Well, I'm going based on what I see myself. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know if that's necessarily true that it's fully on his point of view. I feel like we're just more third party
I
perspective.
think it is very intentionally because you even hear it with musical cues and stuff.
You do hear
It's light and romantic.
you do hear monologue from him, so that is true, right? You do hear like
You hear
there's
monologue from him,
voiceover.
and I feel like the musical cues are pulling into his perspective of what things are.
And again, also, I kind of mentioned earlier, but there's a level of paranoia throughout the film about like her and how she interacts with other men usually.
Right.
But it always comes about as a result of Humbert finding out about her being around some other man.
And I suppose that Roy has a part in this production?
Roy? What's he got to do with
Well,
this?
Roy and Rex, naturally, I suppose they're in it, huh?
Don't tell me anymore, because I know exactly what you've been doing. You've been with this boy, this leading man of yours, this Roy. Isn't that so?
Wait a minute.
I forbade you to go to that party, didn't I?
I wasn't going to the party.
Who were you talking to just now?
I tried to call you.
You were speaking to somebody just now on the telephone. Who was that?
It's not independent of him that we see her in any kind of other relationship. It's always just Humbert questioning her and almost chiding her for really ever going around and seeing anybody else or even talking to anybody else.
Yeah, so she doesn't, at least to me, she doesn't come across as promiscuous or anything.
Okay, I don't know what to think yet. It's tough.
But talking about her characterization, I don't think we ever get a scene of her without Humbert there. I think pretty much every scene is Humbert is there in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Right.
that does support the theory that it is fully his perspective as well.
I mean, you know, the man's a paranoid, like, control freak, right? You know, he's very controlling. He tells her not to basically go out unless it's like school or piano or whatever. He basically says you cannot, you know, be a part of a play. You cannot interact with any boys or anybody at all. You know, they always do the things that he wants to do, even though he tells her like, oh, I do all these things for you. They're all things I feel like he wants to do and he knows that
Yeah, of
maybe she
course.
would like.
Whenever you want something, I buy it for you automatically. I take you to concerts, to museums, to movies. Who does the tidying up? I do. You and I, we have lots of fun. Don't we, Lolita?
So there's no real agency in her part to actually live a life, right?
Mhm.
And they're constantly moving. It's a case where we just don't really know anything about her, really.
And anytime she's not with him, she's being messed with by,
But Claire,
yeah,
right?
by Quilty.
I guess maybe something that I feel made it lose its impact in terms of how I felt about Lolita was the fact that, well, the actress was 14
Mhm.
when she did the role.
Oh, was she?
Yeah, she was 14. And she does look older in my opinion. Like when I see her, I had to guess. I thought she was maybe like 17 years
Really?
old.
No, I thought she looked 14. But anyway, yeah.
So that was my impression of it. So I just felt like she didn't look as naive as like maybe the version of her in the book, because in the book actually she's supposed to be 12
Right.
years old.
God.
So I imagine that maybe in this film would have been more impactful if they actually had a 12-year-old actress.
It works for me that how old she is because there's this question of is she being seductive and is she playing into this because she is already growing up, and that questioning helps the impact and the message of the movie. There's a lot of hints that this is not a one-way case of seduction, but this is in fact a predatory sick man who actually cannot get emotionally involved with adult women, and it goes into that through a lot of subtextual clues. So let me start with how the movie begins, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Starts with the murder of Quilty by Humbert, and it's a really cool scene because I think Quilty acts as the alter ego of Humbert. They're like the same person but two different sides of the coin, and Quilty just doesn't hide the monster he is, while Humbert is always trying to delude himself that he's poetic and romantic and he's being seduced and all that stuff. But despite all his flowery language, he knows he's in the wrong. We talked about before about how he's so paranoid all the time and possessive. And it's because he knows he's the monster in this case, despite what he's trying to portray or what he's trying to convince himself of. And in that scene, there's a nice piece of symbolic imagery where as Humbert kills Quilty, he shoots him through a portrait of a young woman. So that's just like a nice little callback
Nice
to
little symbolism there.
yeah, exactly, what they're doing or what these people have done. After that, we'll go back to the scene that Danny you mentioned where she's sunbathing and he's trying to find her room, right? And that's where he meets Charlotte.
Yeah, who is immediately
Infatuated.
infatuated with Humbert.
Well, when would it be convenient for you to have me move in?
Right now, I mean, it would be silly for you to go to a hotel, monsieur.
She's been a widow for 7 years now, and she clearly has not had a man in her life for a while. She did have a little fling with Claire Quilty.
Yeah, it seems to have been like a one-night stand.
Yes, a one-night stand, which is how Quilty, I guess, met Lolita in the first place. But yeah, she immediately tries her very best to get Humbert to move in to the room. She offers him like basically included cooking and everything, and she shows him to the garden. And that's where they find Lolita sunbathing in the back, and that's what really catches his eye. And she even asks him, what was the selling point?
Yeah, very persuasive salesman, Mrs.
Thank
Bates.
you. What was the decisive factor? My daughter?
No, cherry pie.
Charlotte's
Cherry
cherry pies.
pies.
Yeah. Very creepy in context. And then from there, it actually hard cuts to a monster flick. So kind of showing us what he is, right?
Oh my God, and that scene. So it's a drive-in movie theater, and he's sitting in between Lolita and Charlotte. And when the scary scene happens, they all kind of jump in fear. And both Lolita and the mother at the same time put their hands on Humbert's lap. And you see Humbert kind of sliding his hand away from Charlotte's hand and putting it on top of Lolita's hand, which I thought was just very creepy.
And then
Using that opportunity to kind of try to inch closer to her already
Yeah.
so soon.
There's a lot of use of double entendre in this film. And while it can be cheesy, I really felt like it was the right call because the subject matter is so intense. So, for example, after that horror movie scene, Humbert is showing Charlotte how to play chess. And she says, "Oh, you're trying to take my queen." And he goes, "Yeah, that's the idea." And then she puts her queen in a terrible position. And he says, "That wasn't very clever." And he takes it, right? He's taking her queen. So, again, double entendre.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
A lot of foreshadowing there.
And I also kind of felt like that was the movie doing a little light chastisement of Charlotte, which I think is kind of deserved. No, I really think she does a terrible job of protecting Lolita. And I think that's one of the themes the movie's telling us.
Do you think that's what the movie's trying to tell us?
Yeah. First of all, she's too quick to let this stranger into her house. She doesn't see how, because he's not even hiding it very well, his infatuation with Lolita. And she's completely oblivious of it. And then on top of that, I mean, she doesn't look into this guy at all. I think even in 1962, there's references, and she does absolutely nothing to protect her daughter.
Yeah, I mean, I can argue just the case that, I mean, she was just too infatuated with him to really notice anything else in that case. I didn't feel like she was not raising her well, though.
No, not about raising her well. I don't think she's protecting her daughter. She also lets Quilty into their life. Quilty was the first person who abused her and manipulated her. So where's the mom during this time,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hard pressed to give her too much flack, only because like, if you don't know, you don't know. That's a tough thing to like find out about your daughter necessarily. Like,
she's an adult who lives in the world. You got to be a little bit protective.
I mean, sure, but to a point. I mean, like, are we gonna start blaming like, mothers of children that happens to? Saying like it's their fault for it.
Well, it depends
like
on what you do. Are you inviting strange men into your house, or did it just happen outside of your control? There is some responsibility.
Yeah.
There's the
Sure,
amount of,
there's some
there's
responsibility, but I'm loath to give her as much flack as you are, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I said it's light chastisement because she does have some responsibility. She's the mother.
Yeah, there were some. I mean, if maybe we got a scene that really showed that level of irresponsibility, like, there was. I think maybe they tried to when after the dance, they were gonna go over to this couple's house, which they were the parents of one of the friend.
Yeah.
Friends of Charlotte. Yeah.
And I guess, well, she didn't call to really make sure she was there. So there's maybe that. She was a little bit irresponsible in that case.
She
never did go.
She's in a world of her loneliness and her needs, and she's not paying attention to what's happening with her daughter. But speaking of that couple, was it just me, or did they kind of invite Humbert into a threesome?
I think they invited
They
him.
totally did.
I thought they were trying to invite him to like a swingers.
That was my
thing.
first impression, but I couldn't tell between that and threesome. They were like,
Yeah.
we're both very open-minded.
When you get to know me better, you'll find I'm extremely broad-minded. In fact, John and I, we're both broad-minded.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think so.
And that's, I mean, not saying he had to be interested, but that's another case where adult interest absolutely didn't faze him. You know, he just walked away from that completely.
Yeah.
The only
True.
time we see him actually looking at somebody else besides Lolita is when he's at camp and he sees a bunch of other underage girls and he's checking them out.
Yeah.
When was that?
When he goes to pick her up after
that's
her mom
right.
dies.
A camp climax. Another very subtle.
I was going
my
to ask you guys, what's the name of that camp?
Yeah.
That's right.
Woof.
Yeah. So again, that's another piece of evidence that tells me it has nothing to do with Lolita and how flirtatious she is. This is a sick man.
Yeah, I agree. No, definitely. And I was just disturbed too at how fast that couple was ready to just bring this guy along too. Like, well, what is this town?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like what's wrong with all these people? You know, at a school dance of all things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So during the dance, there's also another pretty gross double entendre during a conversation with Charlotte and Quilty, where she says Lolita is going to have her cavity filled by his uncle next week. Did you guys catch that one?
Yes. And he starts kind of like laughing.
Yeah, he starts knowingly laughing, exactly. And I don't think it means anything in the story, but I feel like Kubrick was alluding to a kind of real-world existence of pedophile rings.
And like incest, pedophilia.
Yeah, that seemed to be hinting towards that. And there's also a kind of subtle connotation of danger because of the prevalence of sleeping gas with dentistry. I feel like that had an effect. And actually, Lolita has a poster in her room with Quilty. It's like a dentistry ad. And right next to it are a bunch of pictures of like teen heartthrobs and stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that was a little hint before we get the final realization later on that he's in her life.
And speaking of Quilty, I hated every time he was trying to talk about Lolita. He'd be like, "Oh, little beautiful Lolita, precious Lolita."
Oh, he's the creepiest
Like,
son of a bitch.
He would give like at least 2 to 3 adjectives every time he was talking about Lolita, and it was
Pure,
so...
sweet, gorgeous, innocent little Lolita.
Lovely. I wish I had a lovely, pretty, tall, lovely little girl like that. I mean,
Well, that was my daughter.
your daughter. Gee, isn't it great to have a lovely, tall, pretty, little, small daughter like that? It's really wonderful.
Oh my goodness, that was so creepy.
Can we talk about him for a moment?
Sure.
The bounds this man goes to get with her is insane. I mean, I think they even travel like out of state at one point. And the fact that, he's adopting like different personas and almost like disguises to talk to Humbert, almost like he's needling him. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to set him off a bit, so that he can get worn down and he can then spend more time with Lolita himself.
Yeah, it was definitely a plot to try and get Lolita for himself, which Lolita was part of. She was part of this plot because she was gaslighting Humbert the entire time. Every time Humbert kind of was telling her, "Hey, I think we're being followed. Hey, I got this call." Hey.
Yeah, she thought she was in love with the guy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to scare you, but this car's been following us for the past 3 days, and yesterday it was parked outside the motel.
Oh, I haven't seen any car. Are you sure? I think you're just imagining things.
Humbert and Lolita, when they first see Claire, Quilty, what is that before or after Beardsley?
Oh, wait, say that one more time?
Before.
That's before Beardsley?
Yeah.
Before they move? That's on their way there to that new home?
That was on the way. Exactly. That was right after the camp.
So that's when he decides to make a play at that school. So
Exactly. So at that point, I guess he moves.
Okay, he moves and then he does the play just to get close to Lolita.
Yes.
Yeah, again,
The guy's
the bounds this man
insane.
goes to is
And
insane.
when he's talking to Humbert, he's doing this weird thing where he's almost kind of trying to tell him that we're the same. Like, we're both normal looking, normal guys, right? We talk very normal. Like, well, I was so confused by that conversation.
That was a very strange
normal looking,
conversation.
regular, nice guys. You know, you and me, we're the same.
I couldn't help noticing when you checked in tonight. It's part of my job. I notice human individuals, and I noticed your face. I said, that's a guy with the most normal-looking face I ever saw in my life. It's great to see a normal face, because I'm a normal guy. It'd be great for two normal guys like us to get together and talk about world events, you know, in a normal sort of way. Gee, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. I get sort of carried away, you know, being so normal and everything.
He's
trying to justify, I think, his actions too, and I think he
Justify or play with him. I don't know.
That's what I was saying. I think he's just needling him. He's kind of insulting him, almost like, look at me out in the open, like just openly like insulting you.
Right.
And,
I don't have any problem with what I am. You do.
Yeah, he's openly insulting him to his face, and Humbert's just like super oblivious to it all.
Well, he's in panic mode. His adrenaline is at a high all the time because he knows he's a monster. So, like, for example, when Quilty has a persona of Dr. Zempf, any normal father would immediately, like,
recognize him.
Well, throw this guy out and call the police or call the school
right.
the next day.
But he knew he had too much to lose at that point.
Well, Humbert can't see through the guys and through all his bullshit psychiatry because he's only trying to figure out, what does this guy know? He's trying to keep his lies in check. He's trying to figure out what do I need to do next. He can't put this together where anybody else would have been able to either recognize him or put together that this is a crazy story he's giving him.
Yeah.
Like, oh, your daughter, she's very voluptuous and the boys are noticing and we feel like she isn't developing correctly. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? What normal school psychologist would break into somebody's house to start talking about this? He'd be thrown in his ass.
It's true.
Yeah, he was so worried about the police being called. He's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he was making no sense.
None.
And he really wasn't having any of it until he got that threat, because he knew like that if he called people into the house, he was worried they can find
But he also
something.
didn't want to take the risk of just throwing this guy out on his ass and calling the police. He was still trying to figure out, what does this guy know, right?
Yeah, the guy was deathly afraid of the police. There was 2 occasions in particular where he absolutely refused to call them. If you guys remember, at the hospital as well, because
he feigns being drunk. Oh,
Lolita gets sick. I think she really got sick, right?
Yeah,
There's no way to fake that. But she was supposed to leave in the evening or whatever, and he comes to see her, and she apparently had been discharged, taken by her quote unquote uncle,
Another uncle,
Uncle Gus,
uncle dentist. And he goes into a panic, and they're like trying to hold him down. He's trying to run to double check that she's in the room, and then pretty much alluding to the fact that she doesn't have an uncle named. Did he have a name? Gus? Yeah, Uncle Gus. And then he's like, "Oh, okay, so she doesn't have an uncle. You want us to call the police?" And right there, he just freaks out. He's like,
Yeah, he'd rather she be kidnapped by some
random guy
and murdered than the police be called.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he starts feigning drunkenness.
Yep. He then suddenly changes his tune and says, "Actually, you know what? Yeah.
I forgot.
I forgot. Yeah, the uncle did pick her up. You're right.
I think you feel well enough to leave.
Yes, just let me up. I'm fine now. Much better.
And so I guess the plan was that she didn't know what Humbert was going to do, so she had told Quilty, just follow us and we'll escape at the nearest opportunity, and she just happened to get sick.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Little tidbits, Humbert's favorite poet is Edgar Allan Poe, who married a 13-year-old when he was 27.
Hey.
Oh boy.
Normally that detail wouldn't mean anything, but I think that was an intentional choice that of all the poets he could have picked,
Yeah.
in this context.
Other little tidbit: Quilty rhymes with guilty. His name
Just
literally
as deep.
is just his name is basically Claire Guilty.
Mm-hmm.
He's out and out.
So as you as you guys know, there was a big chunk of the movie where they're going cross country through the U.S., right? Kind of going through this road trip. They don't necessarily, I think, have a stop in mind. As far as I'm concerned, they're just kind of going wherever they want to go.
I think they were trying to get to Mexico.
Were they?
Yeah,
He mentions at one point.
so after they move out of Beardsley, then they go on that road trip.
Right.
Yeah, he's just trying to
Towards
get out of the
Mexico.
country to avoid the law.
Yeah.
Because at this point, he thinks these calls and these people he's meeting are like private investigators trying to catch him.
Right. I know. I thought he was just going wherever Lolita wanted to kind of go. Like,
Oh no,
I
he
wanna see
coerced her
this.
into
And I
that
was
road trip.
like, well, yeah, that's true.
That's true.
But something interesting actually about that, although the story, takes place all in the U.S., it was actually all filmed in England, which I thought was kind of cool. This was during
Writer's strike?
no,
Okay.
no. This is a personal thing actually for Kubrick. Kubrick hated flying.
Oh.
So he did not want to go to the U.S. So they just built a bunch of sets for different exteriors, hotels, hospitals, and different streets. And
It's crazy how even like
Yeah.
35 years later, when they were filming Eyes Wide Shut, I think you had mentioned something similar, that they shot everything in the UK as
Yeah.
well. So while even 35 years later, it's still the same.
What did you guys think about Quilty's wife? She's a weird one.
She's a mute.
Yeah. So Quilty and his wife really reminded me of Epstein and his wife.
Oh yeah.
I thought they were very similar. Like she's kind of in on it, and she's kind of okay with whatever he does. He has all the power.
Yeah, at first I was wondering if she just knew about what was going on, but it was too knowing. They seemed like too much of a power couple. It felt like they were complicit in their crimes.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, she's around him like almost every time.
I mean, when they meet Humbert and Lolita in the hotel, they're like sitting together, both looking at a newspaper, whispering to each other and watching them. Like they're a team.
Yeah, they're both spying on him clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she was kind of creepy for sure. Everyone in this movie is creepy. Everyone's disturbing.
Except Charlotte, but yeah, she had some of her own issues. But
I was a little bit confused at first. We talked about Peter Sellers' performances because I had watched Doctor Strangelove. That came out after, so I guess contemporary audiences wouldn't have had this confusion. But I wasn't sure if it was the actor playing multiple parts or the character Quilty disguising as multiple people up until the end.
I think it's the latter.
No, it is the latter for sure.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if the movie was just going for Peter Sellers as playing these different characters as like a silly thing.
Yeah, I think it was kind of intentionally caricature-like, over the top.
Yeah, for sure.
In a sense, to show that it was being done. I mean, obviously not just by the actor, but the actor playing an actor playing an actor, basically. And actually, this movie is why Stanley Kubrick actually hired Peter Sellers for Strangelove.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because he killed it.
yeah, he did an amazing job.
Here's an interesting aspect. After the school play, Humbert drags Lolita home and she starts yelling. A neighbor interrupts them and says she and her guests can hear every word that's being said. And she also says that the neighbors are starting to get curious about him and his little girl. Now, like, what does getting curious means? It means they're suspecting the truth,
Yes.
right? Nobody calls the police. Nobody questions Lolita. So I think he's kind of chastising society a little bit there, of like turning the other way. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, actually,
There's a lot of people who kind of notice something's weird.
I have a note that I wrote about that. Pretty much, I got the feeling while watching this movie that I don't know if it's just in the world of this movie or if it's just a sign of the times. If this was a little less taboo than it is now. What do you guys think?
I don't think in the world or the times it was less taboo. What made you think that?
Just how, like, I feel like it's taken a little less seriously. Like, like people look down on it, but it's not like, like I feel like today, if they saw that, people would immediately call the police and there'd be a huge investigation. And it would
Personally, I didn't get that impression. But you're saying just by the fact that nobody did call the police.
Yeah, like it just felt a little more loose than I would like. Personally.
I mean, but nothing was smoking gun. I think the problem is nobody investigated the problem, not that people were turning the other way.
Okay. That was just kind of an initial impression that I got. Like I was feeling like, if it made me wonder if Stanley Kubrick was writing it to be intentionally that way, for a specific reason.
well, I think trust levels in like your fellow citizen were a bit higher then than they are now. Right, like if you try to make that film now, as to Danny's point, any reasonable, even unreasonable suspicion of something like that, immediately the cops are called. Whereas back then, I could see, patriotism being a bit higher in America. People are much more friendly to their neighbors. It's much more about like the nuclear family and community and things like that. So things were more joined together in terms of like people's communal aspects or communal feelings towards one another. So I can see them being like, it's strange, but there's nothing off-putting yet, just because maybe they're just an overly friendly family. I don't know. Whereas again, now if you if you see that, you're like, nope.
You think so? You think people would instantly call the police? And I feel like people mind their own business even today.
Well, it'd be like on Twitter, you get like a picture of them or a video of them, and people would criticize them, and then maybe somebody would follow up on it.
That's assuming people are peeking over their fence, though. That's what I mean. I feel like people are more self-involved now, so it'd be less likely to be seen.
There's definitely a lot less neighborhood involvement, I think,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
community-wise. So, yeah, people, but at the same time, I feel like that was one of those neighborhoods where it's like, all the young kids going to the nearby school, and all the parents kind of know each other a little bit more. So I can definitely.
For me, it was the fact that she said her neighbors were asking questions. Like, you don't just ask questions. That means they have a suspicion, something specific. So the fact that there was something specific they were worried about and still did nothing is the part that irks me.
Well, a couple of things. One, I would say they could actually hear it. So what do you do then, right? Like, I imagine they're in a situation where they're like, they hear this argument. Humbert's still charismatic enough to kind of hand wave the situation. And also, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think they leave town the very next day.
That's part of it. There wasn't much time to do something at that point.
True.
But I wouldn't even characterize him as charismatic. He does the bare minimum to wave people away. Like, he's flustered the whole time.
Right, but also you have to understand that like the way that they portray him in other people's eyes is like he seems very charismatic, right? Like a lot of the older women are kind of fawning over him. There's at least like 2 or 3 instances where, including Charlotte, where they're like, wow, he's foreign, he's like different, he's unique, right?
I got you. He just never comes across as charismatic to me. To me, the attraction seems to be a wealthy, good-looking older man. That's a rarity for these women.
I think the foreign mystique is huge.
That too, yeah.
That's really the big thing because, ultimately beyond that,
he's a catch by attributes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he's definitely not charismatic. I don't see it at all. Just intellectual, or at least intellectual.
He barely wants anything to do with other people.
Right.
I don't know. I saw him like at the piano recital, and he was pretty charismatic with the piano teacher.
How bad did you feel for Charlotte?
Very
terribly.
Yeah,
terribly bad.
I was like, this poor woman. She just wants some love. She was just lonely, miserable.
Yeah.
And she was being used the entire time. I mean, so Charlotte goes and takes Lolita to a summer camp.
Yeah.
Are you sending her to that Camp Climax again?
Well, of course. We've done it every summer since she was 10.
Camp Climax.
Terrible.
And she leaves a note with one of the maids.
Yeah.
And
love letter.
A love letter that she gives to Humbert. And the love letter pretty much states that, like, look, I'm infatuated with you. I think I love you. And that's why I need you to leave. Unless you feel the same way about me. So I'm going to be back tonight. So you could either leave or you could stay, and that means you love me as much as I love you, and we need to get married.
And she doesn't expect him to.
Right.
Because come on, he's been blowing her off the whole time.
Exactly.
She does not think he's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But what really creeped me out and like bothered me about this was the fact that as he was reading this, you see almost like this pure joy in his eyes.
The fact of your remaining would only mean one thing, that you... that you want me as much as I do you.
And he's almost like giggling inside because, and in a normal romance movie, right, that would mean it's because, oh my God, this woman loves me. Awesome, I love her. But no, it's like, here's my opportunity to stay as long as I need to get Lolita.
Yeah, he's cackling.
He's cackling.
While like sitting on Lolita's bed. It's the worst.
Oh my goodness.
And then when she finds out he comes up with this stupid story. She reads his diary, and he's
yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm creating a novel, and I'm just using you and Lolita's names."
Well, first thing he does is call it a hallucination. He's trying to gaslight
he
her.
just straight up called you're hallucinating.
This is so easy to explain. It's a hallucination. You're crazy, Charlotte.
Well, let's
Just woof.
let's explain what happened to lead to that, right? They start having this fight, and Charlotte kind of goes to take a bath. Humbert gets this idea suddenly that he wants to kill Charlotte. So he goes and he grabs Charlotte's dead husband's
pistol.
Yeah, gun, and he walks up to the shower, and he's kind of having this inner monologue. He hasn't quite walked into the bathtub yet. You can kind of see the corner of the bathtub.
And what does he say? This is the perfect murder, which I was just laughing at. It's a terrible murder.
Horrible.
Yeah.
How are you gonna get away with this?
He's delusional beyond belief.
Yeah.
So yeah, finally, after some inner monologue, he decides, you know what? All right, I can't bring myself to do it. He walks in to just talk to her instead, and she's not there.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time she had been in his office, just reading this letter.
Because he got interrupted before he could lock up the diary the one time.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He always kept that very well locked up. But yeah, the one time he messes up.
Which the hubris on that man. To
keep a diary.
To monologue his inner thoughts in that thing and to keep it out. Like he even at one point says, it's a little dangerous for me to do this, but I kind of like the thrill of it.
Yeah.
Man.
This man is a creep in all levels.
Oof.
So I was surprised you didn't get the pistol and just start blasting right there.
Yeah, I almost half expected that myself.
He like kicks down the door.
Well, it's too late now.
Yeah,
Boom.
exactly.
Kicks out the door. He's like, freeze. Jesus.
So then, so she goes a little crazy. She decides to just run out the door in the rain. And
Jump out her window.
She jumped out her window? I thought
It was a second-story window.
I thought the front door was unlocked.
No, the front door was open.
Oh,
the front door was open,
Yeah. No, she did.
That's what I thought.
There was no reason. He never pulled out the gun. No. She goes downstairs and she leaves through the front door, and then you find out she gets hit by a car.
Jumped in front of a car.
The car swerved to dodge a dog, and then she.
But why was she? I got the feeling she was going out there to kill herself.
Maybe.
Really?
I mean, she kind of threatened it earlier with the pistol. That's how Humbert knew about the pistols.
That's true.
Basically, she says, if you leave me, I don't know what I would do myself. I'd probably shoot myself.
But if I ever found out that you didn't believe in God, I think I would commit suicide.
Hey, a gun.
This is a sacred weapon.
I bet you the I swerved to avoid a dog was his excuse, trying to make it seem less bad.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the driver's father comes and tries to bribe Humbert to, not press charges or anything. And Humbert's like, yeah, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, you're so gracious. To be fair to the driver, it definitely wasn't his fault. I definitely think she either was in a panic and ran across the road or jumped in front of it.
I love that scene because after the father of the son is relieved. He's like, oh, thank goodness, I was even willing to pay for the funeral. And then Humbert's just like, oh,
thank
that's
you.
nice, yeah, go for it. And you almost see the regret in his face.
Yeah.
Like, damn it, I should not have mentioned this. I could have gotten away with this without
Definitely.
paying anything.
He was more depressed, not because she died, but more because she got found out.
Yeah.
And he could have gotten away with it fully if there were no witnesses. But.
So Humbert has his dreams come true and probably gets a big insurance payout too, because her ex-husband was an insurance broker or something. So I'm sure she was well taken care of.
I mean, he rented the house, and so he got plenty of money from that too.
Yeah, even if he didn't get a big insurance payout, he's got the house. He's got all her assets.
So he's got all the assets. He's got Lolita now.
Yeah.
He's in a really good spot. But he's never going to be happy, right? Because he's always going to feel scared to get found out. He's always going to be nervous. He's always wondering what Lolita's doing, who Lolita's talking to.
I think he asks her if she's telling people probably 5-6 times.
Yeah. The man will never find peace in this.
Definitely not.
At all. Even if he seemingly, quote unquote, won. What do you guys think about how subtle the relationship the romantic aspect or the sexual aspect of Lolita and Humbert are during this film, right? Because you never really see them being physical to any extent, right? It almost looks just like a father-daughter thing, but it, obviously it hints.
Honestly, it was creepy enough just with him touching her arm and shoulder sometimes. I think it was just an absolute necessity to keep it as vague and subtle as possible. You just need to know what's happening.
Right.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean the worst part was when he was like giving her a pedicure. I'm like, ugh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With the context of knowing what's going on, every
Exactly,
little
yeah.
touch is terrible.
I think that really increased the moments where things would go up just above subtle, right?
Yeah.
That they become memorable. Like, for example, when he first picks her up from the camp and he's like, oh yeah, she said something, I've been cheating or not being faithful or something.
Yeah,
at the
she's being
camp.
playful. Mhm.
Yeah, being playful with him. And he's like, oh, what makes you think I haven't missed you? She's like, you haven't kissed me yet. So that moment really rings out. If they've been like making out or something like the entire time, then that doesn't really matter, right? So that really stuck out. And also in the hotel, the little game that they decide to play that we don't really know what it is.
But some time passes.
But we
until
know
they
it's
leave.
sexual. It's something.
Well, that was the first time something happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes you. It just leaves you kind of wondering, like, what was that game? What's going on?
I don't know. I don't want to know.
No, like, I don't want to know, but I do want to know. Like,
no.
you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's
No.
disturbing. It's like one of those, like, you cover your eyes, but you leave
Almost
one
like
unpeaked, like, what's happening?
Almost like seeing a car crash and you can't look away.
Exactly. It's
Callback.
fucking disturbing, but you got to see it.
It's a callback.
Very disturbing. As a matter of fact, so disturbing. Even though there's so many, it's so subtle most of the time, it's still disturbing enough to be banned in Ireland.
To this
Really?
day.
I don't know if to this day. I think so. All I know is at one point, maybe they unbanned it. I don't know. Do they unban movies eventually?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. I'd have to look into that. But at one point, it was banned in Ireland, at least. I could tell you that much.
I'm surprised it's only one place.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtlety to the relationship, but I did at least appreciate the film characterizing her in a way that, for the most part, would make sense in that situation. One, and two, still characterizes her as like a teenager. She still acted like a teenager. She still, when she was with her mother, would like lash out against her, make funny faces and things like that, and that never really went away, right? And even as a young adult, years later, she still kind of had that teenager at heart kind of mentality, right? So I appreciate that they didn't make her seem like a full-fledged adult right then and there, right? So
Well, and the fact that she mimics being an adult is also very realistic.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Did you guys think this film was too long?
No.
I always have to ask that for our movies over 2 hours. No? Why not?
Because I don't think there was any wasted scenes. Everything was entertaining. Everything was engaging. I thought it told the story it was trying to tell. And I also felt like you kind of needed to go along with the false romance, the false father-daughter dynamic. Everything had an intent into showing the realistic dynamics that happen between predators and victims.
Yeah.
And how that plays out. So I thought that all had a purpose.
I agree with that. Yeah. No, I do. I agree with that. At the time, I wished it was shorter because I was watching it so late at night and I was tired. But
How late?
2 a.m.
That's early.
Oh,
No comment. Anyway, yeah. So that's why I was like, oh man, this movie is going on and on. I didn't realize the runtime was 2.5 hours. But yeah, thinking back on it, it kind of it needed all those events to take place so that the characters can really just unfold and you could see all those dynamics happening subtly over time.
I liked that I was constantly guessing at where the story was going, and that only happened because of the turns it was taking.
Yeah, I definitely did not expect the movie to go this way at all. I thought the movie was going to all happen within that house.
Me too.
And, you know, eventually he's going to get caught out and, whatever, and go to jail. I don't know. But the death and then moving to another place with her and then going on the road trip and then her disappearing and then marrying another guy, which we didn't even go into yet. Yeah. So after she runs away runs away with Claire Quilty from the hospital. She eventually goes off with him. She lives in his ranch or something in, where was it, Texas?
I believe so.
It was like a dude ranch or something.
Dude
like that.
ranch in Texas, and they have a falling out. They don't show that.
Well, she escapes him, but you remember why? Because she's in love with him at this point.
Yeah, she's in love with him.
But what is? Do you remember what he does to like make her realize?
He tries to get her involved in some kind of picture,
art
An
film.
kind of
art film.
art
Oh.
film. Yeah,
Which
Right.
at that point she's worldly enough to realize what it is. He's trying to get her in pornography,
Right.
yeah,
probably with the help of his wife.
That's true.
probably. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, she's at least mature enough at that point to like run away from that, and seemingly she marries the first guy that she runs into. That's
Well, who's normal and
who's
around her
normal.
age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This guy named Bill, and then she's pregnant. You find all this out because pretty much through a letter that she's writing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a mix of a letter and then
She just spells it out.
and then
at the
Humbert
end.
comes to meet her, and she pretty
Well,
much
really-
tells him the story.
Yes, he wants to run away with her, but half of his intent is to find Quilty and kill him. He
Right.
doesn't know who it is. He doesn't
Yeah.
know it's Quilty.
Yeah,
But he wants to find the guy who stole her.
At first, he thinks it's Bill. Right.
That's
He's like,
right.
is that the guy? He's like looking at him through the. Through
He
the
says,
glass.
"Is that the guy I'm looking for?" Like it's so obvious he's there to kill someone.
He's got his hands in like the finger gun motion. He's like, "That son of a
I'll
bitch."
be back. but before we finish with the ending, since you asked, you mentioned at the beginning that you thought it was too long. Do you have any context you want to add to that?
Yeah, there were a lot of scenes of him nervously like looking at his watch. Like that was a common refrain that he would do to try to like get out of a situation. So, oh, look at the time, right? And they just kind of went to that well one too many times. And in general, a lot of those scenes where he's nervous, I feel like they went on just for a bit too long. I wasn't really engaged there. Like, I felt like I got the point within like a couple minutes of that scene, and the scene would last another like 5-6 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the Claire Quilty scenes when he's kind of like putting on an affectation of somebody else, I really could have done without. I think the film would have been a bit stronger if like they had the scenes towards the beginning, like in the dance, and you kind of meet him and all that, and then we don't really hear about him again for a long time. Because like him again, it just felt so strange for this man to like follow them everywhere that they did. Right, like yes, I understand their chance meeting happened at the motel or the hotel, but beyond that, it's like I wish they would have had that hotel scene, maybe that one scene there, and then like we don't hear from him again, and then we find out it's him, going along and doing all these things to try to get to her again. A lot of those scenes after is just like we could really do without.
I will say I agree with some of his like monologues or like the conversations could have been a
way
little
too long.
shorter.
God,
Like
they're way
he
too
goes
long.
off into these weird tangents for like too long, and it was supposed to be kind of on the comedic side a little bit, but I don't know. It was just kind of throwing me off, like just how long they were going on for. Specifically, the one in the balcony of the hotel.
That went entirely
And the doctor
too long.
and the Dr. Zempf one. Both of those could have, I felt, been cut shorter. I don't think they should have been removed. I think they were a little bit necessary. But he rambles on for way too long.
Personally, I really enjoyed every moment of Peter Sellers' performances. But I hear you guys. So then after we see Lolita and her new husband, we're back towards the beginning of the movie where we see the murder.
Mhm.
And it tells us that Humbert killed Quilty and then dies in prison for his crime of murder. What was it, cardiac arrest or heart attack?
No, thrombic something or another.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually felt that was unnecessary. I don't
Having
think
Humbert die in
just
prison?
writing
Just
out
that
that
epilogue
like
thing.
the epilogue, was it?
Yeah, it was an
Writing
epilogue.
a little epilogue title card. I just thought maybe it should have just gone. It should have just gone to the title, to the credits from the painting, and that's it. Just like leave it to your mind.
You didn't want the catharsis of Humbert dying in prison?
Not really.
No, because we see him throughout the film like slowly degrade, right? He's degrading. I mean, like he goes from being like upright and very assured of himself, and very I think a bit charismatic, to like towards the end, like people actually call him out and say like, man, you look really sickly. He's kind of hunched over. He's like stumbling over himself. Like we can see plain view that he's just both the mind and the body are just withering away. Like he's
broken, sick man. And at the very end, he resorted to cold blood He finally did it, something that he alluded to earlier that he tried to do. And I feel like that already tells you enough. Like, this guy's life is going downhill. He's going to go to jail, or he's going to die, or something's going to happen to him.
I think I agree. And then it's also like 20 seconds extra, so it doesn't hurt my opinion, but I think I agree with you guys.
Yeah. Plus, they show when he's getting chased or when he's getting followed in the car, like he's holding his arm, and he says, like, "Am I having a heart attack?" Or no, Lolita says, "Oh, I've heard that's like an onset of." Or
Yeah,
signifier
she
of heart
read it
attack.
in a magazine. I guess it wasn't common knowledge at that time that that's what a heart attack looks like.
Right, exactly. So it's like they kind of at that point, I'm like, okay, he's probably gonna die of a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, epilogue I don't think was needed. But
I mean, the movie gives you as happy an ending as you can possibly have in this story. So I thought that was something.
Kind of.
What could have been better?
No,
after what happened?
it's just sad. Like, it's sad because it's just like, now look at Lolita's life. Like, she's just living this almost sad life, and it's forced out of.
I mean, but it's
all
sad.
the predicament.
For most people who went through that would end up much, much worse.
Yeah.
And he gives her like $20,000 in the end in 1962, so they're gonna
True.
be fine.
Which amounts to
A shitload.
a ton of money.
a boatload.
Let's look at my inflation calculator. A shitload.
Yeah, it was like 200 grand or something. I think I didn't write it down, but yeah, it was a lot of money. That's true. I don't know. It's just at the the credits,
I guess in your mind there is no happy ending.
yeah, with the credits rolling, I was not very cheerful. I was just like, oh.
No. You're not
This
going to walk
is
away
a
cheerful.
bummer
I just
film.
think at least they give some catharsis there. She's going to be okay, and the two bad guys eat it.
It's just so strange. Again, the tone is so unusual, right? It's such a serious film, but at the same time, there's this comedic element, slapstick or not, right? But you can't deny there's like a there is a comedic. It's like it's a dark comedy.
Well, I think it comes
drama.
down to the same reason. If you didn't have it presented in a comedic way or in a presentable way like that, then you end up as like a B underground movie. Like, how else are you going to show this to people and put it in theaters? It's such a dark subject. That's why you need to have it through subtext and double entendre and all the stuff that's like creepy to watch. But the alternative is to watch a grown man,
I read that that's actually one of the elements they took from the book. The book was also comedic, apparently, like also a dark comedy.
Sure.
One of the only things they took from the book, really, because I read that Stanley Kubrick actually took the writer to a private screening before the movie came out, and the writer's comments were like, barely any of my book is in here, but
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds like Kubrick.
but it's a good movie. But I like the movie. So that makes me curious on reading the book, actually. Though I don't know, I don't want to get bummed out even more.
Yeah, you could do that. I have no desire.
I guess
to
an
ever think about
easier
this again.
An easier alternative too is to also watch the 1997 version of this film that was released, that I hear has certain redeeming qualities to it. It is also another take from the book.
Maybe it's more faithful to the book.
It's not actually.
Okay.
It's actually, well, it's not comedic
further away.
for one. So the tone will match the subject in that. But I do love Jeremy Irons, so
It's great.
yeah, I wouldn't mind giving it a shot and kind of comparing
Yeah.
the two.
I think overall it's a balance of how watchable is it versus what is going on. So it's a dark material regardless. Like you're never gonna feel like, oh, this is a funny movie, you know. But you had a thought you wanted to mention.
Oh, I just have no desire to ever really think about the subject matter, because it's like ultimately it's pedophilia is bad. Okay.
Well, I don't think that was the message. I think if it wasn't comedic and if it had like dark music, that would be the message, and that would be boring.
It's more like this is a
Well,
norm of society, right?
this is happening all around you. That it's the people around you. That's not people in trench coats and alleyways. That's a lot of the message.
It's wrong, but it's not. It doesn't look. It's not looking wrong immediately. Almost kind of deal.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
I get that. To me, it's just I don't think it was necessary. Like I think the film itself just wasn't really necessary. Like that's a book you didn't really need to.
Wait, is any movie necessary?
Yeah, I
What do
was
you
about
mean?
to say
No,
that as
in
well.
terms of like the message that they're trying to give.
Well,
I think that's an important
it's
message.
it's raising it raises an awareness.
Not everybody's
course.
aware of that.
Yeah,
Like for example, the mother.
like this is a norm in society. Like this is not just a dark tale that happens every once in a blue moon.
Well,
This is just
there's an example in the movie Charlotte. Charlotte doesn't realize that this is a threat and that it's a normal, maybe good-looking, successful guy.
imagine a mother watching this movie with
Sure.
a teenage daughter, and like I think that might open her mind to some things, right?
Yeah.
Some ideas. So absolutely, I think it was worth.
Or even
writing.
look at the messaging of, like we mentioned a few times, they bring up uncles subtextually, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a common pathway of abuse.
Why is it always uncles?
Well, because it's
Maybe more
a
statistically, that's the case. I don't know.
well, it's a convenient pathway to abuse. It's a familiar member that people don't suspect you.
And they're not. I guess, and to the uncle, it's like it's not as close as a daughter to him. I don't know.
There's some
like,
separation, yeah. I mean,
I
but
guess.
it's a real problem,
Yeah,
and it's something
true.
that they're bringing up.
It is.
Sure, just the way they went about it. I'm still a bit incredulous with like who was actually doing the harming. Not Humbert, but Quilty. I just thought all that was like just too ridiculous to be showcasing any kind of like real world realism, so to speak.
Oh well, yeah. It's set around like a bit of a fantasy plot, obviously, because this writer and chasing someone through the United States and all that. But you got to kind of look around that.
I mean, they're making it an entertaining.
Yeah, they're making it
movie.
They're making it a movie, but you can't just look at that and just be like, "Watch out for these writers chasing." It's not. You can't look at it so like.
So is the problem that it's too dark or it's too silly?
It's both. It's a weird combination that I don't think works on either level.
All right. So what did you guys think overall of the casting of this movie, of these actors that were casted? Specifically, obviously the two main, Humbert and Lolita.
Awesome. What about you?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have any complaint or anything. Yeah.
I thought Lolita was excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really good casting. Again,
Yeah.
like from what I said earlier, like it could have been more impactful or a little different if she was a little younger.
Mm-hmm.
But you made an excellent point saying that it kind of then raises a question of, is there
Well, like the question you had in the beginning, right?
right of
Exactly.
the maturity, if it's intention, if there's actually intent there from her or not, because she's
Yeah.
old enough to
How much of
know.
it is her fault versus whatever? It wouldn't be that way if it was a 12-year-old.
Right, which makes me wonder how the book is, considering she's 12.
Mm-hmm.
What is the approach there to the character? For the character of Humbert, James Mason, I felt that I think someone else could have been better than him. I didn't love not his acting. I thought he acted well.
The main
Humbert.
character.
Oh, you
The
didn't
main
like
character.
him? Okay.
Yeah. Is he German?
No idea.
Yeah, he sounded more British. He had a British affectation about him.
Really? Because I kept hearing some German nuances in his accent that threw me off. I don't know. It made it feel more evil. I mean, that's wrong for me to say, but I don't know. I feel like a more charming individual could have been better for it. They did want Cary Grant initially. That was like the number one.
Wow.
But Cary Grant refused. He did not want the role, for good reason, I suppose. But I think this guy actually was the third pick for it, and I can almost see why a little bit. Myself.
I could see somebody with a stronger presence.
Yeah.
As far as his personal performance, I thought he did fantastic.
Yes,
but I hear what you're
agree.
saying too.
I agree. The personal performance was good, but just his natural
Sure.
look and natural charm, I guess, wasn't as strong as I would have liked. I think.
Yeah, not the strongest screen presence, right?
Exactly. It would have been more impactful with somebody else. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I thought the acting was one of the few saving graces of this film, to be honest. I thought everyone did what they need to do to get the point across. And especially, I would say the main character, that's where I would disagree with you. I thought he was the type of person necessary to showcase what the film was trying to get across, right?
Yeah.
So at least like in presence and in the way he speaks and things like that. So yeah, I thought everyone was fantastic. I thought the directing, besides my misgivings about like the more kind of quote unquote comedic aspects in there, I thought like the actual just directing of the film, the cinematography I thought was wonderful. It's hard to knock Kubrick for his directing.
Oh,
So
no,
to
yeah.
speak. So
It was-
yeah,
it was-
I thought
that was
as usual hit it
fantastic,
out
of
of the
course.
park. Yeah.
Absolutely. And for Lolita, obviously, her being probably one of the most important characters to cast correctly, they actually auditioned 800 girls
No way.
for this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wow.
So definitely they picked, they picked correctly.
Yeah.
And you talked about
wonderful.
and you talked about the cinematography. Something early in the film that I noticed that actually caused me to pause it. I looked to the side of my 16:9 TV, and I noticed that there were black bars, as you would expect, right, for a movie in the 60s. However, the black bars were very small, like a few inches.
I was gonna say, because also not even always. A lot of older movies actually have wider aspect ratios than we're used to. So,
Oh, really? So
yeah.
I mean, this one was kind of a fairly unique aspect ratio.
Apparently.
The 1.66:1 aspect ratio.
How did you even notice? I mean, this is an offbeat question, but how did you even notice the black bars on an OLED? Like, I didn't notice them because it's perfect blacks,
Well, yeah, but I mean, during scenes, it was like a day scene, wide shot of a car driving, right? So it's very noticeable.
Okay, well, good catch.
Thank you. So yeah, I paused. I was like, what aspect ratio is this? So I looked it up, and that was the aspect ratio that Stanley Kubrick specifically wanted.
All right, very cool. We ready for scores, guys?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I'll start.
All right.
I give the film a 6.5 out of 10. This was an exceedingly long film. I never felt time move so slowly as I did with this one. All the characters, I think, save Charlotte, are for the most part unlikable, and the central premise of it and the way that the film showcased that the themes of the film, I thought were pretty difficult to watch, and I think ultimately unnecessary. I did like that the film took its time to showcase the main character's descent into like degradation and eventually death, but I was never really engaged throughout. And basically I'm just watching some asshole get his just desserts for like 2.5 hours. I thought the acting and directing and the music choices, by the way, were saving graces of the film, and it's hard to knock a Kubrick film for like those kind of things, so I think that elevates my score of the film. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10.
I'm going 9.5 out of 10. An incredibly brave story to tell, full to the brim with contextual and subtextual themes, captivating performances, and highly engaging throughout. What about you, Dano?
I give it a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was overall very engaging. There were a few moments where it did slow down in the pacing, but I was never like completely bored or anything like that. I thought the cinematography was fantastic and the soundtrack as well. The acting was very incredibly done, as I would always expect coming from a Stanley Kubrick film. And like you said, Alejandro, was a very brave film to write, and I thought it was an important message. So I did enjoy that aspect of it. And Peter Sellers, amazing.
Peter Sellers.
Gotta throw that in there, right?
That's all you need.
Hell yeah.
All right, next week, join us for Wings of Desire, 1987.
I can't see you, but I know you're here. I feel it.
A fantasy romance film following a jaded angel who tires of his purely ethereal life of merely overseeing the human activity of Berlin's residents and longs for the tangible joys of physical existence when he falls in love with a mortal. You can stream it on HBO Max or Amazon Prime with subscription, or you can rent it on YouTube for $2.99. Sean, where can they find us?
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Ardent Cinema. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, give us a rating and a review and leave a comment. It goes a long way towards building this podcast. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, hit like, click subscribe, and hit the little notify bell so you're made aware when new episodes drop every week. And with that, guys, thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it. And with that, we bid you adieu.
Farewell.
Long live the new flesh.